Hey, welcome back to another edition of Everything Football 62. I'm your host, Jonathan Big Tex Johnson, a.k.a. Uncle Tex, a.k.a. Professor Tex. Hey, man, and before we even start this thing, man, y'all go ahead and subscribe to the channel, like, share, you know what I'm saying? Check out the channel and whatnot. Got any questions, anything like that, leave it in the comment section. You guys already see by the name of the title of the show today, right? And I'm going to go into detail on how come and why I think it kind of is an overrated stat. Like I said, you could tell by the title, I've wrestled with this pretty much for a good while now. Don't get me wrong, the quarterback sack, and have an offensive team lose yards. That's huge, right? Especially if you capitalize off of it. As we saw what happened right when football was starting up the season, the quarterback sack was in the official recognizing the stat started in 1982 because prior to that it was just an unofficial stat. I have no idea why it was like that, but then they went back and started counting guys' sack totals going back to 1960, which makes sense too, considering the fact that considering the fact that the 60s is when the player, well, I'll talk about it later in a second here, actually coined the phrase and whatnot. And 1960 also marked the start of the AFL, which, as we would see, emerged 9 to 10 years later in 1970, merged with the NFL, and give you what you see today in the NFL. One of the main reasons I'm bringing this up is because we see that T.J. Watt, who is on the verge of breaking Michael Strahan's record of 22.5 sacks in a season, although unofficial, Bubba Baker had 23 sacks. Also saw where Harvey Martin also had that total the year he won the Defensive Player of the Year. Why is it unofficial? If you can go back and count, back 1960, you'll be able to properly see. If I'm not mistaken, Deacon Jones had a 26 sack season, if I'm not mistaken. When all you have to do is look at film, either go back and look at film, either use it or not, make it official. You know what I'm saying? It was a sack just because they didn't use it back in they didn't start using sack as an official stat until 1982, which is ridiculous because interceptions is not an unofficial or an official stat. It's an official stat. Night Train Lane got 14 in 12 games, and he was knocking jokers out of the games. So that was an official stat. There is no unofficial and official. There was always sacks of the quarterback, but it wasn't anything major until Deacon Jones coined the phrase, and also that it could be a game-changing play for your defense, helping out your offense and putting them in great field position. In my opinion, with Deacon and the Fearsome Foursome, which was led by, of course, Deacon, Merlin, Olsen, Rosen, Gary, Lamar, Lundy, and I think later on a guy named, let's say Roger Brown, can't think of his name, would take Rosie Greer place after I think he got traded and whatnot. And all this was going in the mid 60s to that in the somewhat of the mid 60s and whatnot, going into the early 70s, a little bit to the early 70s and whatnot. Then you had in the 70s, in the 70s and beyond, you had like the Purple People Eaters of the Vikings and whatnot, Steel Curtain and the Doomsday Defense of the 70s. This is when you start getting some of your best athletes that was on the defensive side of the ball, and big plays was one of the major things that was happening at that time. Steelers defense probably considered one of the greatest defense out of all that bunch, obviously, from the 70s and whatnot, and what they ended up doing. And you would later see that all over Chicago Bears, 85 Bears defense, and all this other kind of stuff that would go on. This, like I said, so if you look at it, so a sack was a major play. Look at it this way. Tackle for losses was a stat that began in 1999. Also, a quarterback hurries, which can cause a quarterback to throw the ball, you rush him for an incompletion, or better yet, a pick. Also, the term yak, or yards after the catch, which was big, starting basically, I said, in the mid-'80s because of the 49ers West Coast offense with Jerry Rice, John Taylor, and Roger Craig taking short passes and breaking tackles and making other people miss for extra yards. The irony of all this is a lot of these terms that we use today was coined by the late great John Madden, right? by him. Remember, he was in the booth drawing circles around players on the screen and whatnot and stuff like that, telling what they're doing. Boom, boom, doing all that, being animated and whatnot. But he's using the term yak. He talked about tackles for losses or whatnot, or rushing the quarterback like he oftentimes did with like Charles Haley. And like, look at him, he's coming in there and he's rushing the quarterback. And Haley, because people was like, well, Haley only had 100 sacks, blah, 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 blah. Look at his hurries. He was a master of that. It was like, if I can't get to the quarterback, I'm going to rush him, and you could rush him into a bad throw, which in turn could be an interception or an incompletion, right? And whatnot. Those three things that happen with that, and that does the play, and a lot of times that gets you off the field, and that could cause a turnover, a pick six or anything like that. You start talking about a sack, the sack is great if you can get off the field. You know what I'm saying? If you can cause a fumble, take Joker out of field goal range, force a 4th and long for them to have to punt the ball. If those things aren't happening, it's just another tackle. Case in point, this past Monday Night Football, Baker Mayfield was sacked by the Steelers like 9 times. 9 times. On that drive, on the long drive where they actually scored their last points, and he was sacked 4 times by T.J. Watt, who's having an outstanding year. He's sacked 4 times. He sacked him 4 times, and all that, and he only missed 2 games. With all that, he's missed 2 games. The Browns probably could have won that game if they was dedicated to the run. They wasn't running Nick Chubb at all. You can hear Louis Riddick sit them and tell me why ain't they running? Why ain't they running? But that just goes to what the Browns end up being, and whatnot. But the Browns' last score was a 17-play, 76-yard drive where he was sacked, I think, like 4 times. But the Browns still scored, and it should have been over 9 plays before that. And the game should have been completely out of reach. However, it wasn't. This is what I'm saying. All of those sacks, and they still scored. Where was the strip sack? Where was the fumble? Punting the ball. Anything. Rush, hurry, interceptions, whatever you want to call it, and whatnot. Meant nothing. It meant nothing. All of that stuff meant nothing because they still scored. Now, to be fair, the Steelers still won the game, and that's all that counts. But a really good offensive team would have probably ripped them apart. Remember Derek Thomas, 7-sack game on November 11, 1990 against the Seattle Seahawks? He harassed Craig all day long. All day. And on the play where he would have had his 8th sack, game over. He missed the sack on Craig, which led to him hitting Paul Scansey for the 25-yard touchdown to tie it, and Norm Johnson added the extra point, making it a 17-16 game over. Making it 17-16 game over. All of those sacks that he got didn't end in a win, and those Chiefs had some pretty good defenses back then. My whole point is that the sack stat can be a little overrated if it doesn't make a game-changing play that helps your team and put the offense in a short field position to score. Position to score, then it's just another tackle. Give me a pressure and a deflected pass any day that can end up in a pick six or just a good old turnover. Or just punting the ball away to us because we stopped them from coming in. We can get the ball in the defense's hands. You see what I'm saying? So I think the sack can be a little bit overrated at times. A lot of times. And a lot of guys have a lot of sacks, a lot of this and a lot of that. And people say, oh, yeah, just sack. He's not in the Hall of Fame. This is that and the other. It's almost like in certain points where a guy can throw for 450 yards in a game or throw for 5,000 yards in the season and have 35 touchdowns but have 25 interceptions or something like that, and they finish 8-8. You know what I'm saying? A lot of that stuff become junk yards. You're getting those yards because you're playing from behind, so it looks good. Case in point, go back to Jameis Winston, 2020 season, I believe. I want to say 2020 season. I'm sorry, 2019 season, where he threw like 30 touchdown passes, but he threw like 32 or 33 interceptions. And because he threw for 4,000 or 5,000 yards, he figured he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league. I'm like, you know what I'm saying? All of that's good and fine, but did it end in a win? Did it end in a good record? Did it end in that? And even with a lot of guys getting sacks, could be garbage sacks or whatever and stuff like that. Man, I got this sack, I got this, I got that, I got that. But really, what kind of a player are you? Did those sacks and stuff like that, did they end in points? Did you take team out of field goal range? Did you make them turn the ball over? Did you cause a turnover? Did you do any of those types of things in the midst of that? And a lot of times a sack can cause that to happen, but also at the same time it can just be a tackle. You can I've seen guys get sacked, 3rd and 24, 3rd and 20. I mean, we sacked them first down, second down. Now it's 3rd and 25, and they complete the ball. It's almost like those 2 sacks didn't even exist. And that's why I say it's a little inflated at times. It means something. It's a tackle when it means. It means something when you get something out of it and stop and you stall the drive of the offense. Otherwise, you could sack the guy all day. But if they're still converting on 3rd and 15, 3rd and 18, 3rd and 19, 3rd and 12, after you've sacked them a couple of times, it was just another tackle, and they still get the ball. I tell you guys all the time, there's no greatest all time as long as time's still going on. Like I tell you guys all the time, numbers don't lie and get emotional. People do. I'll probably be back a little bit later with a little something talking about your boy AB, which y'all already know I've already talked about before about this happening. Guys, have a good one.